Hello there my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this bubble macrame bracelet where we create all these circles going all the way around the wrist, and I like to call them bubbles as that's what they make me think of. So we're going to be using a pretty cool technique to create these bubbles, and I've also added beads along the edges. You can of course choose to leave them out if you don't want them, and you can really use whatever materials you choose to. This is just going to show you the basic technique. Now if you like what I do and want to see more, I have loads more tutorials, literally hundreds on my channel, so please feel free to check that out. And if you want to support me, of course you can always like, share and subscribe. And you can also become a member where you can get early access, exclusive content and more. You can find all that information down below as well. But if you want to learn how to make these cute little bubble bracelets, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. Now the cord that I'm using is a c-lon cord in this lovely berry colour. And I'm going to pair that with these 3mm metal spacer beads. Now you can of course mix up what materials that you want to use, so use a different cord and beads. Just make sure that the cord will go through the holes in your beads. Now to finish off the ends of the bracelet, I'm going to use these 10mm ribbon ends that have these little loops in them. So I've got a lobster claw clasp, an extender chain and a couple of jump rings to put it all together, but you can of course use whatever clasp you prefer. And to go with the ribbon ends, I'm also going to be using some glue just to make it extra secure. Now as for tools, I'm going to use tweezer nose pliers and chain nose pliers for the ribbon ends and the jump rings. And of course we also need some scissors to be able to cut our cord with. Now to make the macrame, I'm going to be working on this project macrame board here along with these T-pins. It's going to help hold our work in place as we're making it. You can just use whatever you have handy. So the length of cord that we'll need is 6 lengths of about 1.5 meters each, and then what I do is just put the ends together and then tie a knot about 10 centimeters in to help hold all the cords together while we're working with them. And we're going to use these ends here to finish it off at the end. So I'm going to grab all my cords here, and I first want to just attach it to my board. So I'm just going to take a couple of T-pins and put straight down through the knot here, just to make it easier to start out working with it. Just something a bit like that. And then what we're going to do is get straight in to making our little bubbles or circles, whatever you prefer calling them. So I'm going to separate out our cords here. Now what I'm going to take is the outer cord on either side and just put them out of the way for now. And then we have these 4 left in the middle. Now I'm going to take 2 of them. I just like taking the 2 kind of top ones. It doesn't really matter because obviously they're all bunched together and they're not there. But we're going to take 2 cords here, and I'm going to take the furthest right one, cross that over towards the left, and then I'm going to take the furthest left one, cross that over towards the right. So just push these out of the way. We then have these 2 cords going towards opposite sides, but making sure they're crossing each other here. And then the 2 cords that are left underneath these 2 here, we're then going to use to make knots around both of these 2 cords. So just using one at a time, I'm gonna, using one hand here, hold on to both cords and kind of leave a gap on the one side I'm going to start with. So I'm just going to hold on with my right hand at first. It doesn't obviously matter, but whatever you feel comfortable with. And I have this little area that I can make knots on. So I'm grabbing my first cord of the 2 that are coming underneath that are left, and the furthest left one. I'm then going to bring this from underneath and bring it around both cords here, back down through the loop that's created by the cords that we crossed over each other. So if I hold it up here, you can see the cord is now crossing around both of them, and then holding on to the 2 holding cords here, which are the ones that are crossing, and we're making the knots around. I'm going to tighten this further down, and this is the first half of our knot. I'm then going to repeat the process. So just do the same thing again. Bring the working cord around both of those holding cords there, and then holding these holding cords taut while I'm then tightening the second half of the knot that's then been tightened all the way down here. So that's the first cord done. Now I'm gonna swap hands, so I'm then holding on to both of these holding cords with my left hand. I'm gonna grab the remaining cord that's underneath, do the same thing but on the other side here. So it's coming under, I'm gonna bring it over the top and around both of these cords here, the holding cords. And now I'm working with my right hand, and this is gonna get tightened also all the way down right next to the other knot that we just made, but on the other side of it, so towards the right, and just repeat, bring it around again. So these knots that we're making are double half hitches. So the second half of it here, tighten that, make sure to hold the holding cords taut. And now what you're going to be able to see is we have two knots, one on either side, with all this loose cord in between. So all we're going to do to tighten that up is go back to the holding cords here. You can see they're coming out from the knots, going upwards and away from the knots really. Now what I like to do is just take one at a time to begin with, because we have a lot of loose cord down here. Put my finger on the knots and then start to gently pull one holding cord at a time through. And you can see that's now shortened one of the lengths here. I just do the same thing with the other side, to put my finger on the knots and pull the holding cord through, so they are way shorter, because then I can go in and then pull at them at the same time until the knots end up sitting taut right next to each other. You can just make sure to retighten the working cords there. But then we now have the holding cords coming straight out to the sides instead of kind of upwards and away. So this is the beginning part of how we're starting to make a circle. From here, we are then going to continue using these as holding cords, but I'm just working on one side at a time. Now, the very outer one that we haven't used yet is going to be the next working cord. I'm just starting on the left side. It doesn't matter. You could start on the right side, whatever is more comfortable for you. But take your holding cord, and then what I like to do is grab the working cord from that side as well, so the one we used to make, in this case, the first knot with, and bring that with the holding cord. Now what I like to do, you don't really have to do this, it's just something I personally like to do, is kind of twist them together, making sure the working cord goes underneath and just twisting it a couple of times. Then I take my working cord from the left here, bring it under the holding cords. So this now comes in towards the middle, and I'm then going to make a double half hitch with this working cord. So you want to bring it around over the top of both of the holding cords and then back through the loop of itself. So when we're looking like this, it creates a reverse 6, and then you want to then tighten this so it's going to sit right next to the knot that's in the middle, so the first one that we made, and kind of just continue the row of knots. Now that's the first half. You need to do the same thing again, so around the holding cords, back underneath, making sure to come through the loop of itself, and then tighten that, and always hold the holding cords taut in the direction that you want your knot to fasten in. So obviously for now we're kind of going out towards the side. From here I'm then going to bring the working cord, the same one, under the holding cords, and do the same thing but with opposite hands. So I'm going to take the working cord around both holding cords there, back underneath them, make sure to go through the loop of itself, so you can see it now is going around in the opposite direction, so we kind of get more of a normal 6. Now tighten this again right up next to the previous knot, and repeat to make the other half of the knot. So go around the holding cords and tighten that, and I'm gradually moving my holding cords a little bit further in towards the middle, but still at an angle. Bring the working cord back underneath the holding cords, repeat, so make a double half hitch again, and as you can see, tighten that right next to the previous knot. We are just continuing the row of knots here. So repeat to get the second half of this knot. Like that. And we need to do this one more time, so bring the working cord underneath the holding cords. Make the first half of the double half hitch. Tighten that. And now I'm starting to bring the holding cords here more towards the middle and even a bit towards the other side. And you can then also see it's starting to create a curve in the row of knots. Just do the other half of this final knot here and tighten that. So this is one side. I'm going to leave that to the side for now. Go to, in my case, the right side, so just the opposite one here. And again, holding cord here is coming out to the side. Now the working cord from that knot at the very beginning, I'm going to bring that underneath and just twist them together a couple of times. Like I said, you don't really have to do this. It's just something I like to do. And then the outermost cord, so the last one that we haven't used at all yet, comes underneath in towards the middle. And then we want to make a double half hitch around both of these two holding cords now. And continue the row on this side. And we're going to be doing the exact same thing that we just did on this other side, but just obviously in a mirrored image. So do the other half. Tighten that nicely. Bring the working cord underneath the holding cords and swap hands. And then do your double half hitch. Push that up and pull it nice and tight. And the second half, like that. And I'm slowly working my way in towards the middle here with the holding cords when I tighten the knots. Bring the working cord underneath the holding cords and make your double half hitch in the opposite direction again. Again, we're just extending the row here of knots. Working our way in towards the middle. Bring the working cord back underneath once you've made both halves of the double half hitch to make the final knot. In this case here, pull that nice and tight. And again, I'm then holding my holding cords more towards the middle and even a bit over towards the other side as I'm tightening the knots. Do the other half and pull that nice and tight. And we then also have a nice curved row of knots on this side. So we are almost done making our very first circle or bubble. To finish off, we basically have to do the same thing that we did when we started out. So I'm going to go back to the two outer cords. So one on either side, the ones that are the working cords that we were just using. Put them out of the way. And then just focus on the four in the middle here that just have been holding cords. But they're now going to switch roles a little bit again. So just separate them out. So one from either side. I just like to kind of take the inner one. On the right here is then going to cross over towards the left. And then the equivalent one on the left is going to cross over towards the right. And then here in the middle where they cross, we are going to have them basically doubled up. And again, just grab hold of that with one hand at a time. And then in this case, I'm just working on the left side first. So I'm going to grab the remaining cord on that side that's coming out from the knot. So that was a previous holding cord, but it's now going to be a working cord. Hold on to the two holding cords here that are crossing. The working cord is coming underneath, and then bring it around over the top and back under. Make sure to go through the loop of those two holding cords in the middle there. So it's looping around like that. And then as I tighten that, make sure to hold it taut and tighten the knot down to continue the row on that side. Make the other half by just repeating the same thing. Hold your cords taut while tightening the knot. Make sure to pull that nice and tight. Now swap hands. Keep hold of both of the holding cords here with your other hand. And then the remaining cord on the right side here that's coming from the inside of the knots that was the holding cord is now going to be the working cord on this side. So do the same thing but in reverse in a mirrored image. So make your double half hitch, by looping around the 2 holding cords. Make sure to catch around both of them and pull that down nice and tight while holding the holding cords taut. And the second half, pull that tight as well. Now again, just like in the beginning, you can see we're now left with these 2 quite large loops. We want to tighten them up, so I'm going to go back to find the holding cords, so the ends of them that are coming out on the other side of the knot. So just grab one at a time, put your finger on the knot, and then gently pull the holding cord through on the other side here of the knot. So you can see it becomes shorter and shorter. And then just repeat the same with the other one. So make sure you grab that holding cord, not accidentally the one that we're not using at the moment. So just keep an eye on which one is coming out from the actual side of the knot, not the cord that we used to make that knot with, but that's coming through the knot. So again, put your finger on there and then pull that holding cord gently through. And as they are shorter, we can then take both of them and start to pull them at the same time and bring those 2 knots nice and close together. And then I just like to pull on the working cords here that made the knots extra, so everything is nice and tight, and then just make sure everything is sitting close together and we have no gaps anywhere. So we have now basically finished our first little circle or bubble, whatever you like to call them, where we then also have that nice gap in the middle that makes it a full circle rather than having our cords crossing over in some way in the middle, because we brought them with us around the side there. And that is basically how you make the circles or the bubbles, and you just continue doing that throughout. So of course I'm just going to show you again, plus I'm also just going to add beads along the outside edge. You don't have to do that. That's of course just a bit of an extra embellishment. So I'm just going to get the beads ready, and I like to just add them to the ends on both sides so they are ready to go. So the beads are going to be added to the outermost cords, one on either side there. So I'm grabbing just one at a time, find the end, and then feed the cord through the hole in the bead. Now if you find that a little bit tricky, one thing you can do is, if you're using a synthetic cord, so not if you're using a natural cord, but if it's a synthetic cord like this, you can just singe the end and just roll it between your fingers to make it a bit of a needle point. That makes it easier to get through the beads, but obviously that's up to you if you find that necessary. Then let it drop all the way down, so that is ready. I'm just going to grab the other cord here. On the other side again, the very outer one, find the end, add the bead, and let it drop all the way down, because that way both beads are ready, if we don't get caught up here, to go, and I can just focus on making the next circle and not accidentally forget to add one of them. Now we are ready to just start making the next circle, and like I said, this is going to basically be an exact replica of what we've already done. Now just before we do, what I also like to do is start to add some more T-pins or whatever you're using into a piece to make it a bit more sturdy to work with. So instead of it moving all over the place while we're making our knots, it's fastened nice and tight, and it's much easier to work with then. So again, the very outer cords, in this case now, they are the ones with the beads on. Just leave them to the side. So we need to work with the 4 inner ones, so the 4 middle ones here first. And we just basically need to do this section that we just finished off the last circle with. So that means the outer one, I'm taking the right one first, bringing that over towards the left, crossing it over all the others, and the furthest left one of the 4 inner ones, crossing that over towards the right. So where they're crossing over here, we are then going to basically capture them together by making knots around them using the 2 cords in the middle, the very middle ones that are coming out underneath. So grab hold of the 2 cords here, it doesn't matter what side you start with. I'm starting with holding on with my right hand, so that means I'm taking the furthest left of the 2 middle cords, making my double half hitch, so bring the cord around both of the holding cords there. And then as you pull that tight, make sure that we hold the holding cords nice and taut So these knots are now going to end up sitting right underneath the previous ones that we made. So basically the circles or the bubbles are going to be butting up right next to each other, back to back or side to side, however you want to look at it. And then do the other half and tighten that. And swap hands. Keep hold of both cords there, now with the left one in my case. So take the right one, the only one that we have left here, make your double half hitch and tighten that while holding the holding cords taut, and do the other half and tighten that all the way down. Now again we're left with the two loose loops here in the middle, so I like to just on one side at a time put my finger on the knot and start to pull the holding cord through. Remember, the cord that's coming out through the side of the knot, not the cord that we actually made the knot with. So that's tighter now. Same with the other one. Put your finger on it. Let's try and avoid any knots or kinks forming with the cord here. And then pull that through. And then as they are shorter, I can pull on both and then just basically snap the knots together. So they are now creating a new row of knots that's right underneath the previous row that then obviously created that previous circle. So from here we are continuing making the sides. So that means I'm just starting on the left side. I'm going to grab the holding cord, then I'm going to take the left of the two middle working cords here, bring that underneath and just twist them together a couple of times. Like I said before, you don't have to do that. It's just something I like to do. Then just make sure that that bead is pushed all the way down. Then bring that cord with the bead on underneath the holding cord. So this is now going to be the working cord. And then make your double half hitch. So bring it around, back underneath. Make sure it goes through the loop of itself. So we get the reverse 6 in this case. And then tighten the knot all the way up to now start extending this row of knots. Do the other half of it to make it a full double half hitch, and then you can see there the bead gets trapped right in that little corner between the circles, and it's going to just sit there perfectly. Now bring the working cord back underneath the holding cords, make your double half hitch in the other direction, so we are now extending this even further. And also remember, I'm starting to gradually bring the holding cords as I'm tightening the knot further in towards the middle to put that curve into the row of knots, which is then obviously what creates the circle shape. Back underneath the holding cords to make another knot. Tighten that. Make the other half of it. Always remember, the two knots are what makes the whole one. So we're making 2 half hitches to make one double half hitch basically. And the double half hitch is the complete knot. Again, bring it underneath to make the final knot. And now I'm also holding the holding cords furthest in towards the middle and even a bit over towards the other side. You can see we're getting that part of the circle shape, so the row of knots that creates this side of the circle basically. Now I'm done with that side. Put this out of the way, go to the other side and repeat the same thing but in a mirrored image. So I'm just going to twist them together and then bring the outermost cord, the one with the bead on in this case, underneath and start making your double half hitches. All the way up nice and tight, making sure that bead is stuck in that corner. The other half of the knot, and then bring it underneath to continue making our row of knots here. Tighten that down, making your double half hitches. Bring it underneath in the other direction. Make your double half hitch. And again, I'm bringing the holding cords further in towards the middle, and now bring it underneath to make the very final double half hitch here for this row. And this is also where I'm holding the holding cords further towards the middle, or even over towards the other side, to get the nice curve in place. So we almost have a complete circle or bubble again. All we have to do is connect the two sides on the bottom here, which is the same way that we started out. So we are now just putting the two outer cords out of the way, just focusing on the four inner ones here, the two from either side. So again, I'm then going to cross the inner one on the right here over towards the left, and the inner one on the left over towards the right. So these two cords are now crossing each other, and we have this little double section of cord. Grab hold of that, whichever side you're starting with, and then take the remaining cord on that side and make your double half hitch, and make sure to tighten it while holding the holding cords taut and continuing that row. In this case on the left side here, and then on the right to swap hands and then use the remaining cord coming underneath, and make sure to go around both of the holding cords here, so down through that loop that they both create. Hold the cords taut while tightening the knots like that, and that's where we end up with our loose loops here in the bottom, and where you then want to identify the holding cords coming out from the sides of the knots. One at a time, put your finger on there and then gently pull it tighter, and the same with the other side, so we can bring them closer together until eventually pulling on both sides and snapping the knots together. So it then completes the full row here on the bottom, and we complete the full circle. So that is now our second circle, and you can see they're sitting nice and tight right next to each other, or below each other, however you want to look at it. And this is where you then go straight in to making your next one. Before that though, if you are adding beads, remember to add them. I'd like to just add on both sides so I don't end up forgetting. Like that, and let it drop all the way down. And then just on the very outer cord on the other side as well, and let that drop down. And then we are ready to just get on with the next circle or bubble, and you just keep going like this until you reach the length that you need. Mine is obviously your clasp. So now I got my full length done here, and I've reached the other end. Then what we need to do is just finish off the ends, and what I'm going to be using are these ribbon ends, but I want them to kind of clamp onto something other than the last circle itself, because that will then cover some of that circle up. So I just want to create a little bit more here on the end so we don't end up covering up that circle there. So what I'm going to do is just start on one side. I'm going to start with the outer cord, doesn't matter what side you start on. Then I'm going to lay that over the other two cords on that side and just do a double half hitch with each of them. And as I'm tightening the knots here, I'm going to hold the holding cord towards the other side but at a bit of an angle. So we're kind of following the angle of the circle and working our way in towards the middle. So a double half hitch right up against this side of the circle. Use the next cord that's coming underneath, so the next working cord there. Tighten that right next to the first knot. Just like that. So that's the one side. I'm going to just put them back out of the way. Then go to the other side and grab the outer cord there. Bring that over all the others. Now this time I'm actually going to leave the holding cord from the other side going to the side that it's naturally wanting to go to now. So crossing over to this other side, in this case the right side. So now on this side here I have 3 working cords. So just starting with the outer one. So the one that's right next to the holding cord. And again, hold the holding cord and you can then use the row on the other side as a guide to basically come across the end of it, but again at a bit of an angle there, so they end up meeting each other in the middle. That's the first one. The next card, make sure to grab the very next one that you run into, make your double half hitch, gradually making the row longer here. And now we have the same amount of knots as we do on the other side, so now I just want to connect them. So this really could be either side as the working cord or holding cord, it doesn't really matter. Whichever cord is coming over the top of the other one is going to be the holding cord, and the one that's coming underneath is going to be the working cord. You could swap them if you want to, depending how you want yours to look, but like I said, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to make one more knot here and tighten that, and we've now also connected the two sides, and the two rows of knots are meeting right there in the middle. Then what I want to do as well is just make the end a little bit more of a straight line to finish off, rather than this angle or corner, you could say. So I'm going to basically start repeating what we just did. So I'm just going to start on the left side, bring the outer cord over all the others in towards the middle there, and then I'm going to make a knot with the very next cord, starting out in the exact same way, and just hold that in the direction and tighten that knot so it goes right underneath the first row that we made, and the other half of the knot to make it a full double half hitch. And then I'm going to stop there on this side, going to move straight over to the other side, take the very outer cord, bring it over the others, and make a knot with the very next cord, tighten that, and the second half. And then just by doing these two knots, so one on either side, we have now straightened off the end a little bit, enough so it will now fit nicely inside of our ribbon end. So what you want to do is remove this from the board, because we still have the other end where we started out. So I'm just going to undo this initial knot, and then you can refasten it and just repeat the exact same thing as I showed you here. So both ends are ready to get finished off with our ribbon ends. Then to finish off the end here, what we're going to do is first of all cut off the excess of the cord. So you just want to cut it down so there's just short little length left. Now I'm using a synthetic cord, so what I'm going to be doing is singeing down the cord here, basically melting it. If you're using a natural cord, then you obviously can't do that. You'll need to just use glue or something like that. But cut off the excess, and then using a lighter, and obviously be careful because this is a naked flame and it does get hot, but I'm then going to singe down the ends. That then seals them in place. Just do a bit at a time, kind of press against them. So we're getting rid of the excess cord but also sealing the end so it's not going to come undone. And then just making sure I'm getting a nice straight end here. That's going to of course fit nicely inside of the ribbon end, which we can then grab and just check. It's going to fit just perfectly on there. Now what we're just going to need is, I prefer to use glue anyway, so I'm going to grab a bit of glue and I'm just going to put a bit on a toothpick and use that as an application tool. Now I like to then add some glue inside of the ribbon end first. Now you don't have to fill it up because it's going to get clamped down and any excess glue is just going to come spilling out. But make sure to cover the inside walls, and then I also like to put a bit on the actual end of the bracelet, on the end here that's going to go inside of the ribbon end, and just kind of make sure to get a little bit in between the nooks and crannies, so that way. Just going to add a little bit more here. When we then bring the two pieces together and the glue dries, it's going to really adhere nicely together and be nice and strong. So once we have that, I'm going to then take the ribbon end and place it just over the top of the end here, and then we need to start clamping it down. So I like to hold the piece in my hand and put a finger on either side of the ribbon end to stabilize it in place, and go in and gradually close it up more and more, moving from side to side until it's almost all the way down. And I just like to check that it's still sitting where I want it to. And then we can go in and do the final squeeze, make it nice and tight. And I also always like to just make sure to close up the sides as well. And then of course you want to repeat the same thing on the other end, and then just leave it to dry. And then once it's all dried, you have these little loops in the ribbon ends, or we can attach our findings. So once you've finished off both ends and attach your findings, your bracelet is finished and ready to wear. And you end up with this really cute and unique macrame bracelet that have all these circles or bubbles, as I like to call them, going around your wrist. And it would also be great to make multiples in different colours and maybe stacking them, but of course you can use them however you like. So keep an eye out on my channel, because I'm also going to post a tutorial where I show you how to make a bracelet with this technique but with multiple rows of bubbles on it. And you can also have each row be a different colour if you want. So that'll be available soon, and there will be a link in the description box down below once it's ready. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one and maybe you learned a new macrame technique. So thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.